Hi, this is Mark Arnold with another Fun Ideas podcast. And today I have a special guest brought to us courtesy of the great Charles F. Rosenay, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. This is Phil Fang Volk. Yeah. And there's he's showing
And
the
there's the fangs right there.
Yeah.
I still got them. They're the real deal.
That's very good.
They're not fake.
Not a denture fang. That's good.
But these are fake.
Ah. All right.
What rating does this show have?
No rating at all.
Okay.
There's no class.
Okay. Well, we want to have some fun with it. We want to keep it light.
All right. So obviously, let's get the inevitable out of the way. I mean, if you don't know who this man is, he was in Paul Revere and the Raiders during their 65 to 67 heyday, and he's pictured here on the album if I'm looking correctly.
Yeah, the guy with the shorter black boots.
Yeah, yes. And
Smitty has no shoes on, and Harpo has his United Airlines red slippers. Yeah, there you go. And the reason we did that is because they said, "Oh, we're just going to shoot from the waist up."
Oh,
so when we showed up and they saw the pictures, it looked like something like some kind of a conspiracy theory that Paul is dead, you know. And said, "See, Paul, he has short boots. Smitty has no shoes. Oh, Smitty's gonna die."
Yeah, I never looked at the cover that closely until right before we're doing the show, and I go, "How come they don't all have boots? What's going on here?"
That everybody thought that was totally unusual, and they thought, well, there's a message here. There's some kind of hidden message with that. But we all thought, like the photographer said, we just want it from the waist up. Yeah. So, but go ahead and wear your tights.
At least you wear pants. No tights. Yeah.
So Mark, the white tights. No, those were not just one pair of white tights. Those were two pair, and all they were was white nylons. And we had to pull them up, one pair, and then pull up another pair, so they were thick enough to look like white tights. I mean, this was before spandex and everything.
Since we're asking about the uniforms here, or talking about the uniforms, I mean, I'm familiar of, I was born in '66. So while you were making all these hits, I was a wee little babe. So that's where I'm at.
Well, I tell you, '66 was a zenith year for us. Zenith. It was huge.
So it was only in retrospect that I go, wow, these bands actually dressed up and did all sorts of things that bands later on didn't do. They kind of barely dressed nicely at all in the 70s and 80s. So
they dressed like a bunch of bums.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to think.
We were in the entertainment field, and we put on a show, and just like the Temptations, who were dressed really nice and they did steps together, Paul Revere and the Raiders was one of the few bands that could actually play hardcore rock and roll and do some really complicated steps, and the people loved it. And when we walked off stage after a 2-hour set, our clothes were soaking wet. We were called the hardest working band in showbiz.
Now, when you joined in 1965, the group had been around for a few years. In fact, you saw them play and became friendly with them. What was the band like then? And did they wear the uniforms then, or did they just have the name Paul Revere and the Raiders?
I can straighten this out for you.
Okay.
Paul Revere and the Raiders were a really hot dance band in Nampa, Idaho, in Boise, Nampa, Caldwell, and they played dances. And my older brothers and sisters would go to their shows or dances. It was only dances, like at the National Guard armories and the IOOF halls, any place that's big enough to hold 2,000 kids. And each kid would pay $1 and get in. And Paul Revere and the Raiders would entertain them for 4 hours. That's why we got so wet.
Okay.
We worked that hard for 4 hours. Okay, so here's the deal. When I joined Paul Revere and the Raiders, I was at college at the University of Colorado studying classical music. And I get a call from my great buddy Drake, who I taught how to play guitar, by the way. He ended up being in the Raiders in 1963. And I didn't join until 1965. But the old bass player, Mike Holliday, was having some mental issues because of his girlfriend passing away. and he just wasn't together anymore. And Paul knew he had to make a change. And Mike was a great guy, but I feel bad that he went through that tragedy. But Drake talked to Paul, said, Paul, if you get Phil in the band, we can dance and do choreography and do stuff the band has never seen before, because we're both great dancers. Mm-hmm. And so Paul called me at the University of Colorado, and my hair was real short, probably like this. And he offered me a gig, and I'd been at the University of Colorado for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And I decided I'm gonna quit school and join the circus. So to speak. No, joined Paul Revere and the Raiders. So I met them right here in Vegas. Mm-hmm. They were playing a little gig at a club, a dance club called the Pussycat A Go-Go. Mm-hmm. Now remember, Paul Revere was just a dance band.
Right.
And the reason I got so excited about this band is that when I was still in high school, Paul Revere and the Raiders were the stars of our annual variety show at Nampa High School. I was only like 15. Drake was barely 15. Mm-hmm. And we went to see Paul Revere and the Raiders. They closed the show and they did like maybe 30 minutes mm-hmm. in the Nampa High School variety show. And we went nuts. We thought, oh God, if we could only be in a band like that, wouldn't that be great? And so I joined a band in Boise called the Chancellors. And I was in that band for a couple of years. And Drake and I formed a little group called the Sir Winston's Trio, which played a little lounge in Boise. It was just me, Drake, and a keyboard player. And we traded off on bass. That's how much bass experience I had. I would play guitar, he would play bass, and then he would play bass, and I would play guitar. Oh, Sir Winston's Trio. But we managed to get on a daytime TV show that one of the big disc jockeys in the Boise area was the host of. And they would always bring on an act to do a performance. And Sir Winston's Trio was on that show. And we did a couple songs, and boom, there it was. Okay, great. Bye-bye. Thank you, Sir Winston's Trio. See you later. Well, the next day, Drake and I are walking in downtown Boise, Idaho, and we come across a window with a sign in it, and there's a picture of Paul Revere and the Raiders. And it says playing live tonight. We're saying, what the heck is this joint? And we look up at the sign, and it's called the Crazy Horse. This happened to be a teenage nightclub that Paul Revere built to woo the teenagers in to his nightclub. No alcohol. Wow. No alcohol. So we go and we watch Paul Revere and the Raiders perform in this little club. And of course, we were thrilled and we were clapping and yelling through every song. But unfortunately, it was not a very big audience. And Paul Revere was very, very depressed about this. So we stayed at the club after his gig and talked with him, me and Drake and Paul. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that Paul Revere said to us, he says, guys, I saw you yesterday on that TV show with Sir Winston's Trio, and you guys are good. I liked you. You got a good groove. And he says, the only problem is you don't have a drummer. If you had a drummer, you could play my club regularly. We said, really? Wow. Drake and I looked at each other and went, man, this is happening. And then we said, wait, we don't have a drummer. And then we asked Paul, hey, is it all right if we borrow Smitty for the first week? Smitty was Paul Revere's drummer. Right. Now, the thing that's so providential about that, you got Smitty, you got Fang, and you got Drake. Those are the three Raiders that eventually left the Raiders in '67 to form another group called Brotherhood.
Right.
And that was a big breakup of the original band. But there we were in 1963 playing together as a rock band, Drake, Fang, and Smitty, and the keyboard player. But there it was, the original Brotherhood, who was not yet Brotherhood, Mm-hmm. We weren't all Raiders yet.
Right.
Drake wasn't a Raider. I wasn't a Raider, just Smitty. Right. So anyway, we played the club the rest of that summer of '63. We used Smitty for the first week, and then we found our own drummer and just kicked butt all summer long. We brought the kids in. Paul knew we would attract kids because we were good. We were popular with the kids in Boise. In fact, we were even more popular than Sir Winston's trio because we were a quartet with 4 guys. We couldn't call ourselves a trio.
Right.
So guess what we called ourselves? Take a wild guess.
Oh, geez, I don't even know.
Go ahead, try another one.
Sir Winston's Quartet. How about that?
Wrong. Wrong. We were called, believe it or not, the Surfers.
Ooh.
The Surfers? Where are you coming off with that name? Well, we decided to wear tennis shoes, cut off Levi's, Hawaiian shirts, and go a whole different image and call ourselves the Surfers. And the funny part about it, we didn't play any surf music. Not one tune, not one tune by Jan and Dean, not one tune by the Beach Boys. We played absolutely no surf music.
Wow.
We just played rock and roll, raunchy rock, and R&B and soul, and the kids went nuts. In fact, we got so popular in that one summer, just playing at Paul Revere's club, that we were asked to play at the Miramar Ballroom, which was a headliner's kind of a big ballroom in Boise, Miramar, which holds, like thousands of people. And we packed the place out, the Surfers, in 1963. And so we had a blast. But then came the time where I had to leave for Boulder, Colorado. And at the end of that summer, Paul Revere told Drake, he said, Drake, I'm going to fire my guitar player. I'd like to audition you. I love your playing. You got a great groove, a great pocket. You're fantastic. He's only 16 years old. So Drake played with him for a couple hours and showed him all his licks and his chops. Paul loved it. He didn't make a decision that night, though. But the next day, he goes knocking on Drake's door, and his mother answers, and she says, hello, can I help you? And he says, I'm Paul Revere. Oh, nice to meet you. Drake has been telling me all about you. Well, he's got to go on the road today. We're leaving today, and I'm hiring him as a guitar player.
Oh, wow.
And Paul says, where is he? And she said, oh, he's still in bed. He played guitar all night long, practicing. I said, well, can you take me to his bedroom? So she walks him to the bedroom, and there Drake is on his bed with a guitar over his chest.
Wow.
and so he shakes him. He says, hey, kid, wake up. Hey, kid. That's Drake's nickname, Drake the Kid 11. That's how he got the name.
Wow.
And so he wakes him. I said, hey, pack up, Drake. We're leaving. We're going on the road. You're my new guitar player. 16 years old.
Wow.
So he never finished high school. So Paul took him out of high school, but the mother was thrilled because Drake was the only breadwinner in that house, because he came from a broken home, divorce and stuff. So anyway, his mom was thrilled. Drake was thrilled. So he went on the road with Paul for 2 weeks at the end of August of 1963. And he came back just in time to say goodbye to me as I caught the midnight train out of Boise, Idaho to go to Boulder, Colorado. So there it was, me and Drake. I taught this guy how to play guitar. Now he's playing with the most famous band in the area. He got the gig that I wanted, and but I was happy for him. And he couldn't stop telling me all the stories of what happened on the road. And of course, there's some great stories.
Yeah.
Parties after the concert, hotels, you know what? A lot of fans, a lot of girls. So he wanted to tell me all that. So there I was, and all of a sudden we hear the conductor say, all aboard. I said, Drake, this is it. I'm leaving. We're gonna separate. But I'm so glad you got the gig. So we said goodbye. I got into the train. I sat right next to the window, and I could see him standing on the platform. And this depot in Boise is above the city. It's a very scenic. It's got a huge clock tower, kind of a Adobe Santa Fe kind of a look. And as you look down Capitol Boulevard, you see way down there the big Capitol. It looks just like the Capitol in Washington, D.C. That same shape. Yep. Beautiful. I mean, Boise is a beautiful city. So the train starts. starts chugging away, and Drake is walking alongside the window, and we're waving and, you know, giving thumbs up and smiling. Pretty soon, the train starts picking up speed, and Drake starts running alongside the train. And man, then it picks up speed, and he's running, and we're waving, and pretty soon I'm losing him because he's falling behind because the train is picking up momentum. And then, boom, we go into deep darkness because we go over a big bridge, no lights, nothing, just into darkness because it was the midnight train. I look back and Drake is gone. Couldn't see him anymore. And I thought, God, this chapter of my life is closed. It was just such a sudden change of everything in my life. My parents were living in Europe, so they weren't there to see me off. You know, Drake was the only person there to see me off. And I was happy for him, but I was kind of, I don't know what that feeling is in your chest when you just feel sorrow, you feel sentimentality, you feel a little excitement. It's kind of a mix, you know, kind of a, what's the word for that? Where mixed feelings? Is that it?
Can be.
Kind of excitement here.
Melancholy.
Melancholy. Some sadness here, some excitement here. And when you mix them all together, the basic feeling is fear. Fear. Where am I going?
Sweet.
I'm on the train. I'm on the train going to Colorado to learn how to be a school teacher in music.
Yeah.
Because that was my major in music. And I thought, dang, is that going to work out? And of course it didn't work out, you know, because I studied classical music. I loved it. I played cello for a while. I played violin for a while. Wow. I studied singing opera because that was my major, vocal music major, and also music education. And of course, my ears were probably better than any other musician that was in that school, because as a rock musician, we learned the songs by listening to the chords, and we could identify the chord progressions. So in one of my classes in college, ear training and sight singing, the professor would get at a piano, and here's a class full of 100 kids. He says, now what progression is this? John, 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 John. And I raise my hand, C, A minor, F, G. And the guy says, yes, that's correct. And the kids would look at me. How do you know that? And I said, well, I'm a rock and roller. we have to learn all the songs by ear. And that's why my ears are trained. And so I did very good in that class. And I did okay in the other classes, learning all the theory. And I can write music, and I can, you know, play all different instruments and stuff. So it was a good experience, but I didn't want to be a music teacher. And so in 1965, it was my sophomore year, my second year, first semester. Drake calls me and says, Phil, I've talked Paul into hiring you. I said, what? Yeah, he's going to let Michael go. Mike's having too many mental problems because of his loss. And I said, oh, really? He says, yeah. He said, have you been playing any bass? I said, no. I have a fraternity band. Oh yeah. Believe it or not, I played standard bass in a folk group.
Oh, okay.
You know, like the Serendipity Singers or whatever they called. I'm not sure what our name was. Serendipity Singers, something like that. It was a folk band with about 12 people, girls and guys. You know, and I was playing rock and roll dates at fraternity parties as a singer and rhythm guitar player, and I'd scream my lungs out on the weekend. Then I go to my first vocal class at the music school the next day, on Monday, and my professor says, Phil, what happened to your voice? I said, well, I was singing some rock and roll on the weekend. And he says, well, Phil, we're gonna have to train you to learn how to sing right, so your voice doesn't get ruined. We're going to teach you breathing and placement and everything. I said, cool, dude, cool.
Very cool.
So that's the way college went. And in 1965, I left college, much to the chagrin of my parents, who were in Europe. Remember, they were living there.
Right.
So I didn't contact them. I just wrote them a letter and said, hey, Mom and Dad, I left college. No, they wanted me to stay in college. They wanted me to get a degree. And that was one of the big things that my dad wanted, because he never got to go to college, and neither did my mom. And so they didn't get the letter for 3 weeks later. And they immediately called the dean of music at the University of Colorado. And they said, "This is Mr. and Mrs. Volk. Our son is Philip Volk, and he's in your music school. And he just quit school and he went to join a rock band. Why didn't you keep him there?" And they said, "Well, he's grown up, he's over 18 and he can make those decisions. And we have no way to keep him here.
Yeah.
He wants to leave, he can leave." And so they were depressed until Raiders got really famous.
Yeah.
Then once the Raiders got national, well, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea.
No, like I said,
I know I've been talking a lot, so I'm gonna take a break.
Well, the question I had, and which that's another question I had, so you answered that one. So, but before you joined and when you just saw them as a performing band, did they wear all the outfits and do everything? Okay. And what type of music did they play? Just old rock and roll, or a little of everything, or
boogie woogie piano?
Okay.
Paul Revere was the star of the show on his boogie woogie piano. And he would stand. He didn't sit at the piano. He stood, and he had a long blonde pompadour that would flop as he played, and he looked so cool. And Mark Lindsay was a sax player.
So he didn't sing.
Well, he did 1 or 2 songs in a set.
Okay.
But the main thing was listening to Paul. So Paul got a record deal with Gardena Records as a boogie woogie piano player.
Okay.
And his first hit record was Like Long Hair.
Okay.
Which was Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C sharp minor.
Okay. See, I don't have that first album. Everything I have is on Columbia.
Dun, 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 dun. And then he was do da da do da da do da 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 do da do da do da ba ba ba. And this was swing music we could jitterbug to.
Yeah.
So the most popular dance song was Like Long Hair. That was the name of the album, but also the name of the hit, Like Long Hair. And everybody loved his boogie woogie piano playing.
Okay. And then did they dress up in the outfits like on that Greatest Hits album, or were they just in suits or something at that point?
What Greatest Hits?
Were they dressing up like you guys did?
That's early on. Yeah, that's way after the fact. No,
right. So did they dress in suits? How did they appear on stage? I mean,
they had those collarless suits that the Beatles wore,
like the Beatles. Okay,
they wore those Nehru jackets, and stuff like that. And then one day, Mark and was it Smitty or Mark and Paul were walking down the street, and they came to a costume store. And they saw these jackets, these revolutionary jackets, and they were doing a special gig. I don't know if it was a Halloween gig or something that costumes would be appropriate, right? And Paul and Mark said, "Why don't we rent those tonight and put them on for this Halloween gig or whatever the gig was?"
Right.
It was something where costumes would make sense.
Yeah.
They got the 3-cornered hats. And everybody wore the Raider outfits. Mm-hmm. And they did the gig that night, and the crowd went crazy. The crowd not only loved the music, but they loved the showmanship. And for some reason, wearing the outfits made the band even crazier.
Wow.
It made them want to ad lib more, and it made them looser, and it made them funnier, and it just gave them license to be wild. Mm-hmm. So that's why they had their reputation of being the most wild show band in the Northwest. And so the outfits worked so good that they decided to keep them, and they had someone make some suits for them, some outfits, some jackets, 3-cornered hats, and it stuck.
Now, how many suits did you have when you were in the group? I mean, did you just have the one and it got soaked, or did you have more?
Oh, no. We had we all had about 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. I was
because on a dance gig, after we played for 90 minutes, we have to go and get another set of dry outfits on the break at the dance hall, And so we all had extra suits. Mm-hmm. But the first time I ever stood on stage with Paul Revere and the Raiders was in Las Vegas here when I was hired, but I wasn't in the band yet. I guess I had to do a little audition. And so I didn't know that when I quit college, but I guess Paul wanted to see me play bass and dance with Drake, because Drake told Paul, if you hire Phil, we're going to do a lot more choreography because we're both good dancers. We're about the same height and we know how to move, because we were great dancers, both of us. And we would teach each other different dance steps over the years when we were in school. And we were popular at the dances because we were the ones who were out on the dance floor. You know how girls like to dance with girls because none of the guys want to get out there because they're too embarrassed. Drake and I would go out there proud of what we could do, and we would show off and dance, light the place up. So anyway, I get down to Vegas, the Pussycat a Go-Go, and they're playing on the main stage, and there's another stage above the bar, a little smaller stage for the relief band. Well, guess who the relief band was? It was a group called the Enemies.
Okay.
That's your big clue. Guess who the lead singer was? Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Oh, the guy from the Three Dog Night.
Yeah.
Wow.
Corey Wells.
Yeah.
And Paul Revere loved his voice so much that he wanted to hire him, but Mark was already the lead singer, and I guess he didn't play an instrument, so he couldn't hire him just as a singer, right? But he thought that guy's great. And eventually, of course, he got into Three Dog Night and they became, legendary. Right. So anyway, Paul wants me to come on stage. I was there the whole week while I had that gig there in Las Vegas. Finally, after about 3 days of watching him every night, Paul says, "Hey, Phil, I want you to come on stage and do a set with us. I want to see you move with Drake. I want to hear you play." And I was kind of nervous. Drake and I rehearsed every day. I played that bass, and I was rusty because I hadn't played much bass. And what's really funny though is the only outfit I could wear was Mike Holiday. Now, Mike Holiday was 6'3", much bigger guy. So when I put the coat on, it just hung on me. And the only hat was his hat. So every time I put the hat on, if I bounced too much, the hat came down and covered my eyes. So I had to keep pushing it up. And I didn't have the black tight pants. So Roger Hart, our manager, had a pair of black tight pants, peggers, the narrow legs. And so, I used his Beatle boots. And so I was decked out as a Raider. I get on stage, and sure enough, Drake and I kick ass. We dance, we play. I made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't hitting all the notes right, but I was playing my heart out the best of my ability. But the thing that saved me is I smiled. And Mark Lindsay, I don't think he's going to work out, Paul. I don't think he's going to work out. And Paul says, "Look at that smile. Look at those two guys dancing. That works." And so he believed in me and Drake. And that I gained his vote of confidence by getting him there and doing the best I could with my smile and my entertainment, my personality, and Drake and I moving together. He loved it.
Right.
Mark wasn't a big fan at first, but eventually, it took him 8 months to come around. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And you know what it was? It was a gig we had in Oakland, California, at a completely black nightclub in the black neighborhood. And we knew that we had to kick ass at that club. We couldn't be just a bunch of white boys playing rock and roll. We had to be soulful. And Mark, had a very soulful voice. He sounded like a black singer. And he played the sax, and we did a lot of R&B anyway in our dances. So we got on stage and we just blew it away. And the crowd, all black, loved it. They got on their feet, right? And so finally, Mark comes up to me and says, he had a bucket of water here. He says, "Phil, you were great tonight. Welcome to the Raiders. Now we're going to baptize you."
Now, I assume that your bass playing improved because it sounds great on the records and stuff like that. And people praise you for your bass playing, as they do, say, Paul McCartney and the Beatles for being melodic and everything. And they act like different things I've read that like you came up with melodic bass lines. Did they not exist before that? Or is it just because recording was so
I majored in
primitive that they didn't.
I studied classical music. I knew counterpoint. I knew melody. I knew all the idioms of the symphonic classical music, Bach and Baroque and Beethoven and Mozart, and I studied that in college. And I had a famous uncle who conducted the Roger Wagner Chorale in Los Angeles at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. So he was famous, and so I was very attuned to melody. I was very attuned to making something musical. And that's what I always strive for, was to make my lines melodic, make them where it created a great counterpoint to whatever was happening in the melody, not just dong, 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 you know. So it really worked. And I was very happy to be a bass player. It was actually exciting because bass players get to play lines, you know. And Terry Melcher was a really big fan of my bass playing. He loved to feature the bass on a lot of the big hit records like Kicks. You know, Drake goes down, 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 and I go boom, ba, down, 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 down. And it was a counterpoint to Drake doing that line in Kicks. And Hungry, he decided, I'm going to give the whole show to Fang on the bass. So the whole song revolves around that bass line. Dong, 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 you know, on Hungry. And we did that. We recorded the bass 3 or 4 times, a regular bass, an octave bass, a fuzz bass, and maybe one other. And then we mixed it and made a composite bass track. And that's why that bass sound on Hungry has such a monstrous sound to it. It's like a big locomotive just pushing that song along. So anyway, Terry Melcher, our producer, who was Doris Day's son, he produced some of the Beach Boys stuff. He produced the Byrds, you know, Mr. Tambourine Man, and he was Columbia Records' golden boy. But he helped us find our niche in the recording field. And especially with me and Drake and Smitty, he would always work with us first, the 3 of us, the rhythm section. And then we would add Paul, and then we'd add Mark, you know, after we had a good rhythm track going. And we didn't use click tracks back then. The song just had to have a steady, positive pocket. And once we found that, and that was Paul's thing. Paul was Mr. Rhythm. He loved a great pocket, a great groove. So once we had that, then we would build on that song. And, you know, remember when we started out, we only had like 8 tracks to work with. That's why we had to ping pong all the bass tracks over to one track to open up tracks for background vocals and lead guitars. And, you know, we had drums. Drums always took 2 tracks, you know, right and left.
But it made for a big, you know, condensed sound. That,
you know, when you hear those tracks, they look they sound so fresh. They sound so alive. You know, it was analog tape, but for some reason, the engineers knew how to keep the sound crisp. We didn't lose much value by ping ponging. Sometimes you can lose presence or quality by ping ponging to another track. But they knew how to do it and EQ it just so that everything sounded good. So I was really thrilled to be in the band as a bass player, because I got used on with my bass lines in a very special way. And you had mentioned Paul McCartney. I loved his playing. He was also very melodic, and he used a pick. I used a pick. And Playboy magazine, I'm going to make a reference to Playboy, not for the women, but because it featured articles on jazz musicians, on entertainers. It was a great magazine in that aspect. It did a lot of profiles on great players, great musicians. Well, one year it had a poll, musicians poll, best trumpet player, best keyboard player, best vocalist, best bass player. Guess who was on the top of the list?
You.
Well, Paul McCartney.
Oh, okay.
He was number one. I'm not bragging, but I was right under Paul. Paul was first. Phil Fang Volk number 2 in the Playboy musicians.
Have you met Paul anytime over all these years?
Never.
Wow.
And I'd love to meet him. Yeah. And I know that he is aware of me and the Raiders, because when Drake Levin passed away, he wrote in my guest book on my website. He says Drake was a great guitar player. It's too bad we're losing too many of our good friends. You know, he wrote a little entry, and it was Paul McCartney. Wow. You know, and so that was really sweet of him. And when John Lennon passed away, you know, when they went to his apartment and cleared everything out, they had the jukebox that he owned there. Yeah. They pulled out a couple of Raiders songs. Yeah. In fact, I heard that on the Beatles station on Spotify or whatever it is. Not Spotify, Sirius XM. They said stepping out or something like that. Yeah, they played Lennon. Here's a song from Lennon's Jukebox, and then they played a Raiders song, and it's exactly all right. So they knew about us. The only Beatle I ever met was Ringo. Okay. Yeah. And he wasn't real friendly toward me because it was at Disneyland. When I had a band there called, is that when you were doing, what's the name of your Friendship group? Train? Friendship Train. That's it. See, I wrote notes. The Friendship Train, and we had put together a 20-minute Beatle medley. Oh wow! I mean, we did like 30 Beatles songs in this medley, and we had condensed it and made all the transitions so cool. It first started out as a 30-minute medley, but the head of A&R at Disneyland said, "No, it can't be 30 minutes, Phil. You got to trim it back." So I trimmed it back, and it got such a good reception from the crowd there. Yeah. And the girls did some choreography, and we all took turns singing the leads, and the transitions were flawless. And so I found out that Ringo Starr was at the front gate coming in, and so I ran to the front gate. Yeah, and I see him coming in, and I thought, oh, this would be great. You know, I had high hopes that he was going to be, because, you know, Keith Allison, a former Raider, Keith, lived with Ringo Starr and Barbara Bach. So he was close with Keith. And of course, Keith was a Raider. So he must have told him a little bit about the Raider history and the experiences with that. And so I figured I got a chance here. So he comes up, he's with Barbara, he has a couple of kids with him. And I say, "Hey, Ringo." And he stops and looks. He looks a little scared, like, who's calling me, you know? And I said, "This Phil Fang Volk from Paul Revere and the Raiders." He says, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you. See you later." And he starts walking away. I said, wait, Ringo. What? And I could tell he was getting tense. I said, "I have a band over here called the Friendship Train at Tomorrowland Terrace. And on the next set, we're going to do a 20-minute Beatle medley. I'd like to have you here." He said, "Okay, thanks. That's great. Bye." He just was like, "Oh, well, gee whiz. Sorry to ruin your day, dude."
Now, this was back in the 70s. Is that when you were in the Freedom
73 to 78.
Okay. So I probably saw you because I lived in LA or LA area. Yeah. Disneyland a few times between 1973 and 76 when I was a kid. Yeah. But I wouldn't have known you were in the group. It was just listening to music at Disneyland. So
yeah, well, there was three girls and me up front. Yeah, and they did great moves and choreography, and they all sang solos. And this is the stage in Tomorrowland Terrace. It comes up out of the ground. Yep. You know, right. And all of a sudden, wow, there's a rock band. You know,
right.
And so you probably saw us.
Yeah. Didn't know it. Hey, we crossed paths.
How about that? You know? So did me and Ringo.
Yeah, you and Ringo. Well, I actually seen Ringo in concert. I almost got to like shake his hand, but he got right at the end of a concert, and they whisked him away, and I was like, damn it, he was right there. You know. Anyway, but yeah,
it's too bad. I kind of figured that maybe he didn't want to be noticed and recognized and cause a little flutter of activity at the park. With
it might have been the timing, because in the 70s, that's fresh after the Beatles and his biggest solo career, so he's probably like a little standoffish. Yeah, I bet nowadays he might be a little more accommodating. So,
and I thought maybe one of these times I would have been selected to be a bass player in a Ringo All-Star band.
Oh yeah,
because he pulled musicians from all different walks of life or bands.
I remember that guy. I don't want him.
he messed me up in Disneyland. He wouldn't let me go. He kept holding on to me.
I didn't want to hear his bad
let go of me. But it wasn't that aggressive. I just can't believe how cold he was.
Let's see. One thing you mentioned you went to college to be a musician and you studied classical musician theory and everything like that. Right. But I read that you were very good in athletics and track and things like that. And it's like,
high school.
Okay. But did you ever consider?
I never pursued that in college. Okay. As it turns out, when John F. Kennedy became president, he instituted a new physical education program requirement for all high school students. They had to run a little race. They had to do a standing broad jump. They had to do some pull-ups. They had to show where their physical fitness was. And it was everybody in the whole school had to do it. So guess what? There was a standing broad jump. We had to stand in one place and see how far we could jump forward. And I jumped 2 feet farther than anybody else in the school.
Wow.
and the word got back to the coach. And he came up to me and said, "Hey, Phil, you know how far you jumped on that standing broad jump? You jumped 2 feet more than anybody else. You got some good legs. I could probably use you in my track team." I said, "Really?" "Yeah." So it turns out I was a good runner too. I was fast. And so I was on a couple of relay teams, the mile relay and the 880-yard relay. And we broke both the state records in those two races, me and the other three guys. For Bora High School. And so we got gold medals. And I went to the trophy case over there at Bora High School many, many years ago. When I went to like a class reunion, we went to the high school, we went to the gymnasium, we went to the football arena and the bleachers and sat there and took a group shot. But we went into the gymnasium where they have the trophy case.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at all these trophies, they're stacked, 10 deep. And I finally see 1963 Bora High School Lions track team, state medal champions. We broke the state record, and it had, the four guys, and my name was there. Oh. And I started to get choked up.
Wow.
I thought, gosh, darn it. They still have our trophy. Wow. Yeah, we were fast.
And despite all that, you still had music as a greater passion then.
Oh, absolutely. I played football in junior high school, and I loved the game of football. But I love it more now to watch it. We have the Raiders. We have the Raiders now.
Right. That's ironic.
What a great combination.
All in Vegas. Yeah.
All the Raiders have ended up in Las Vegas, including me. I'm a Raider. I was thinking I should write a song for them or something.
I was going to say either do that or at least sing the national anthem at a Raiders game. You got it.
No, I don't do patriotic exercises.
Oh, okay. Well.
So anyway, I was thinking, gosh. Yeah. I love the Raiders, and they did pretty good last year. They made the playoffs. Yeah. They got this brand new stadium they built for them, Allegiant Stadium. It's called the Death Star because it has that look.
Yeah.
Just a big black saucer, out there, and but it's a beautiful stadium, especially inside. And the Raiders are doing pretty good. And I got to figure out how to combine my Raider history with their Raider thing and see if there's some marriage there. I haven't figured it out yet.
It could be a spokesman or something from one Raider to another, and you could be like with the big football players and
hopefully I'll get the idea. Maybe one night I'll wake up in the middle of the night and say, got it. But haven't got it yet, but I like football. And I only played football in junior high. Once I was in high school, track was my thing. And I became a state champion. And the coach, and that was all because of John F. Kennedy starting that physical education program in my standing broad jump. So the coach said he must have good legs. So we got to get him on the track. Coach Ed Troxel, great guy. What a great guy. I don't mean to interrupt, but there's certain teachers that you have in high school that are they create pivotal moments in your life,
Yep.
or they create inspiration
Yep.
or motivation, and you have a special connection to them all through life. You always think back to them. You always refer back to, like Coach Troxel, get me into track. I would have never gone into track, you know, but I did, and I loved it. And then my choir teacher, Bert Berta, and I was in choir, and we were going to do a musical that year when I was a senior. And guess what it was? Bye Bye Birdie.
I was going to say Bye Bye Birdie, and I didn't even know.
And guess what kind of character is the lead character? The lead character is a guy like Elvis.
Yeah.
Who's going to go into the military, just like the real Elvis did.
Yeah.
And so guess what role I played? Conrad Birdie. You know? That was the guy's name, Conrad Birdie. And because I had musical experience, and because I was influenced by Elvis Presley, and I loved the way he moved, I did all those crazy hip shaking moves and leg wiggling stuff as Conrad. And there was they didn't have every character in Conrad Birdie, we had two casts, cast A, cast B. And one night cast A did it, one night cast B did it, but they had no understudy for me, because I was the only cat in the school that could do an Elvis Presley impersonation and do the Conrad Birdie character. Right. So I felt very honored that they let me do it all 5 nights, That's
cool. Yeah.
And a great experience. So Bert Berta gave me that vote of confidence. He says, Phil, you're the right guy for this part. And I know you're going to be great, So it was a great experience playing Conrad.
Now, going back to the Raiders, a few more Raiders questions, just because, like before I did, before I did a lot of research, I just assumed Mark Lindsay sang everything, but you also sang on some of the tracks too. Was there any sort of agreement on how you sang or when you sang, or was there friction on that, or how did that work in those days?
Let's see. Was that word friction?
Friction. There was friction. Okay. So
friction.
Okay. All right.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Mark did not want to share the limelight with anybody.
Okay.
Mark was a little possessive of his role. And he got more and more possessive because we recorded a song called The Great Airplane Strike.
Right.
Which Mark Lindsay wrote. And it was a true story when the airplanes actually went on strike. And he wrote a song about trying to get to the airport and take a flight, and they couldn't get out because all the planes were grounded. And it was a clever song, and it was a fun recording session. We had a great groove on it, right? And then the next song we recorded was my song that I wrote called "In My Community." And Terry Melcher, our producer, absolutely fell in love with the finished product. We brought a guy in that he's very famous, and he works with Brian Wilson a lot. His name was Van Dyke Parks.
Oh yeah.
And we were just playing the guitar, bass, and drums line. And you'll find what you need, in my community. We try hard to please in my community. And you may even want to play that song. You can either play it off. You can play it off the original album.
Yeah.
I think it's on Midnight Ride, or no, Spirit of 67, I think. So guess what? Terry Melcher loved it so much that he said, I'm going to put this out as an A side, because, everything there was a 45, the record with a big hole.
Right.
That's it. That was your single. And the 45, A side, B side, and the radio stations were supposed to promote the A side. And so Terry says to Paul, I want to put out In My Community as the A side. He said, what? With Phil singing lead? Yeah, sounds great. He sounds great. The band sounds great. It's a hit. He says, well, let me talk to Mark about that. So he talks to Mark, and of course, Mark, puts the screws to that. And so Paul and Mark insisted that Great Airplane Strike was the A side. Now, Great Airplane Strike. It was a good song. It was a good pocket. It was kind of almost a novelty song because of the lyric.
Right.
And but I could have had an A side. And other bands like the Beach Boys, they had different lead vocalists.
Right.
Mike Love would do a vocal. Carl Wilson would do a vocal. Al Jardine would do one. They had several lead singers in that band. Mm-hmm. And because Terry Melcher had worked with the Beach Boys, he figured, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Let's feature everybody in the band. You're all great singers.
Right.
And Fang sings really good. And this is a great song. And that organ thing that Van Dyke did is a big hook. It's a huge hook, Yeah. But Paul said, absolutely not.
Wow.
So he stuck up for Mark, which I regret to this day, because it wouldn't have been interesting had I been had a hit record as Paul Revere and the Raiders. That would have looked pretty nice on my resume. And who knows where I could have gone from there,
Now, is that reason alone, or are there many more factors why you and the two others left the group in 67 then?
Well, I get asked that question all the time. And the simple answer is we wanted to get more of our own songs on the albums.
Yeah.
We wanted, that's one of the reasons why Harpo left. He didn't get any songs on any Raider albums. He left. Oh man. Let's talk to Jamie. Hey, Jamie. He used to play in my band. Jamie.
My close personal friend, Phil Fang Volk.
This is Phil Fang Volk, and I'm speaking to Mark Arnold on a podcast interview.
Oh, you're doing an interview right now?
Yeah, say hi to Mark.
Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
Oh, doing well. How are you? We're in the middle of the Fun Ideas podcast here.
Jamie and I have been trying to get a hold of each other, and we keep calling each other at the wrong time. But as soon as, can I call you back on this number?
Well, it's about, how long? I don't want to cut your interview.
Well, no. Our interview is probably going to go for another 30, 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
How long do you want to go, Mark?
Well, if you have to go eventually.
No, it's your call.
But yeah, I usually go between an hour and a half,
Yeah, let's at least do 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're having a good time talking about the Raider legacy. So I gotta go right now, but I can call you either tonight or tomorrow.
Let's talk tomorrow. What time are you getting up these days?
I get up late, around 9 o'clock.
All right. We'll talk tomorrow. Is this your buddy from?
Well, Charles Rosenet, right?
Right.
Who, the guy that did the Beatle tours and stuff,
Sure, yeah, still does, yeah.
and the autograph signing parties, festivals or conventions. This is a friend of Charles, right?
Yes.
Yeah. His name is Mark Arnold. He lives in Eugene, Oregon, or Portland.
Springfield, actually, but yeah.
So Springfield was very close to Eugene.
Yeah, it's right next to each
Eugene, Oregon. So we're on the same time frame. We're Pacific time. And
you guys do your thing, and you go 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever you want to do. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, man. Call me in the morning.
All right, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the cameo.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was a great guy named Jamie Leasing, who played keyboards with Fang and the Gang, and we did some great gigs together.
Is he on here? Is he on here, which we haven't really talked about yet? Okay.
I don't think he's on any of those recordings.
Okay.
I don't think I ever got him in the studio. It was all live.
Well, we'll talk about that soon. We'll get there.
Yeah, it was all, he did just gigs with me.
Okay.
Good man, great keyboard player, real talent. Okay. And there's other stories I could tell you, but I forgot them.
Okay.
So where were we?
Well, leaving the Raiders, you said you've been asked that a lot, and it sounded like mainly you all kind of wanted to have your little space on the record, and Mark and Paul were kind of like, no, this is our.
Well, Mark dominated the mix on the albums by his songs and the things he wrote. Mm-hmm. And Paul kind of favored him because he was the teen idol, the front man. But I was getting so much coverage from the teen magazines. Right. And this is a fact of life. I got more teen magazine covers than Mark.
Mm-hmm. Weren't you also on Where the Action Is too? So you were like
we were on the national TV show Where the Action Is with Dick Clark. Yeah. And I got to sing a lot of solos on that. A lot.
Yeah.
And that was great. And Paul loved me and I loved Paul. And we all got along.
And of course, but I knew on the back of your guitar.
I had Fang on the back of my bass.
Yeah, so everybody knew who you were.
The minute I did that, it was during a Mark Lindsay song. And we were kings of upstaging people. So I went to the electric truck and I asked the electrician, can I have some of that black tape? And I had the white Vox bass, so black and white, it was perfect. So I wrote the letters in the tape, Fang, on the back of the bass.
Right.
And because Paul wanted me to have a nickname. And at first he wanted to call me Bucky. And I said, I don't like that. And how about Bugs? I said, no, that name's already taken, Bugs Bunny. Can't use that. Just let me work on it. So he was suggesting, everybody had, Paul was Uncle Paul. Mark was Madman Marcus. Mike Smith was Smitty. And Drake was the Kid, right? I didn't have a nickname. So I got the electric tape, put Fang on the back of my bass. Mark is singing some tune back there on where the action is. And we're taping, the cameras are rolling. And all of a sudden behind him, I flip my bass over. I got that bass right over there. You want to see it?
Oh, cool. Yeah, go get it. Doesn't matter.
I'll show you what it looked like.
Yeah. We're very casual here on the Fun Ideas podcast. I even have my dogs here, so they usually pop in for a cameo.
Yeah, well, I had the dog barking outside, but I didn't let him in.
Yeah.
Because he might create too much of a nuisance. So anyway, it was this bass.
Okay.
The Vox bass, because we were sponsored by Vox, right? And so while Mark was singing and being, romantic and getting all the little teeny boppers in love with him, I get behind him and I hop. And of course the cameras go off of Mark. Follow Fang. And of course, right after that, I got fan mail. Right. And the producer says, give Fang some more songs.
Yeah.
Because we're getting mail for him and the kids like him.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool,
Yeah.
I kind of created my own opportunity there. Mark wasn't thrilled with it, but he had to live with it. So I got more songs on the albums than any other guy in the band except for Mark. He got the majority of the. Because once with the Beatles coming out and knowing that they were songwriters, and their albums were all original tunes.
Right.
We started to pick up on that.
Right.
That trend. Now we started to write. And, Mark is a good songwriter. I wrote songs. Drake wrote some songs. Smitty wrote some songs. And we all had a chance, but Mark got the most of the songs. We wanted to get more songs on because we thought we were writing some good stuff that was more rock and roll, more heavy and rock. Because this is now the late 60s or the 66, 67. Things are getting a little more edgy. We wanted to compete in that arena. So we thought, and Drake was back in the band now because Harpo left because he didn't get any songs. So Drake and me and Smitty were writing good tunes, but we couldn't get them on the albums. And Mark Lindsay was writing some good tunes too. I won't take anything away from him, but some of his tunes were a little too bubblegum. Some were a little too teeny bop. And we thought, we can't go that route.
Yeah.
We're going to miss this new phase of rock that's starting here. The Sgt. Pepper phase and all that stuff. We gotta be hip. We got to be a little more relevant now. We can't be talking about bubblegum stuff. The little girl in the fourth row. I mean, yeah, it's the bubblegummers love that stuff, but it's not hip anymore. So that became the issue. Not only were we not getting enough of our own songs on the album, and I'm thankful that I did get a few songs on the albums, but also we didn't like the direction the band was taking because Mark was kind of ruling the roost, and he was like he had Paul under control, so to speak, and Paul kind of let him do what he did, and eventually Mark became the producer. Terry Melcher left,
right?
Then Mark took over, so it was his gig, and you can see what happened in the later years. Yes, they had hit records, but they never got to the status of the hits that we had it with the original band with me, Drake, Smitty, Paul, and Mark.
Right.
Our stuff went into the top 5.
Right.
Some songs became number 2, number 3, and some were in the top 10, some were in the top 20.
Yeah.
But the other songs that they had later, Mr. Sun, Mr. Moon, Cinderella Sunshine, they were a little bit bubbly, teeny bopper, and they didn't get as high. They didn't go as high, you know.
I think the only one that would compete would be the #1 Indian Reservation.
Yeah, Indian Reservation.
Yeah.
Well, I love that song.
Yeah.
Fantastic production.
Yeah.
I tip my hat to Mark for the production on that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I do that. I do that in my show.
Okay.
I do Indian Reservation. Why do I do that, you ask?
Well, you still respect the group that you were in.
No, the
I don't know
question is, well, why do you do that song?
Yeah, why do you do that song?
Because I have a special connection to that song.
Oh, are you part?
No, I'm not. I am not Indian. I'm not Native American, but I recorded it on my own album. An album. I don't know if you got the album. It's called Fang Revere's The Raiders.
Okay, I've seen it.
I did 13 Raider hits, the biggest ones, and most of them were my time frame.
Right.
The only one outside of my time loop or frame was Indian Reservation, but the version I did was so authentic. I brought in an Indian girl, a Native American girl, and I said, I want you to do some chanting before as the song's getting ready to start. I want you to do some moaning, some groaning. Please, we want to make this authentic. And so we started it with a little music just kind of swirling around, and we had a rain stick and everything. Wow. And she's singing, she's singing whatever, and she's part Native American, and she had some lamentations. And then suddenly you hear the organ. You want to see that album?
Sure.
Can you hold?
I can hold.
Hold on.
Okay. Phil Fang Volk is out to get an album for me. In the meantime, I can show off his latest album because we'll probably promote it pretty soon. Rocker, Fang and the Gang. This is his brand new album, and it's 2 discs. It's actually very good. So we'll talk about this soon, but I would recommend highly getting this album too. So anyway.
Hey, I got one of those.
There we go. Hey, I made a sale already.
Yeah, the last time I did one of these podcasts when it aired, we got numerous sales because I sell these off my website.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
philfangvolk.com.
Yes.
Okay, everybody, class, repeat after me. philfangvolk.com. And it's right at the top of the page. And some trivia.
Yeah.
What's that on my shoulder?
It's a hand.
Question is, whose hand is it?
I don't know.
Come on. Look, his hair is right there, too. Can't you tell by his hair right there?
No. I don't know.
That is none other than My Baby Does the Hanky Panky. Crystal Blue Persuasion.
Tommy James.
Tommy James.
Wow.
And this was at one of Charles Rosenay's autograph festival conventions in New Jersey. We were very close. Tommy and I have a nice friendship, and we went to see him when he played here, got backstage, had a nice visit. But that's Tommy James' hand. I didn't want to take the hand out. I could have done that in Photoshop, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But and this,
we're talking about the album. I mean, it has 2 nifty booklets with lots of color photographs. I'm very happy.
Let me show the people where the booklets are.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah. And there's a lot of text about each song. It's like a whole.
You know what it is? It's my biography.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to write a book, but I'm so much better at liner notes with albums that I even discussed why I'm holding 2 little bunny rabbits in my hands.
Right.
Those little guys were getting ready to drown, and I pulled them out of the water, and I gave them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and they came back to life. So anyway, I love animals. I was raised on a farm, but it does have a lot of text. We talk about the history of the song, where we recorded the song, what's special about the song, and I have pictures of everybody that performed on these records. And so
as I mentioned before the show, you showed Wider Shade of Pale there, and I had seen Gary Booker with Ringo's All-Star Band, and then literally the day that I listened to that record, I found out he had passed away, and I was like, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean my record or what?
I listened to your CD, and then I read in the news later that day that he had passed away, and it's like, wow, what timing is that? Coincidence?
Yeah. So you had just heard my version of.
Yeah. And I said, oh, I really, and it made me think of the original version. It's like, I'd like to see him again in concert or something, because he was great with Ringo, and
he was his voice. He didn't play the organ, did he? He played the keyboards, but he didn't play the Hammond organ, did he?
He did with Ringo's tour. I don't know if he did when he did.
He may have done it with Ringo.
Yeah.
I've always loved that song. I love mixing.
Yeah.
And this is some of the things you'll see on my CD.
Yeah.
Mixing classical music elements with rock and roll elements. Mm-hmm. And it's especially noticeable on songs like All Over No Wonder. That is a complete full orchestration.
Yeah.
And I was very blessed to have worked with an engineer that did a lot of Paul McCartney stuff. And that's Eric, the Norwegian Weinberg.
Yeah.
He was working in Hollywood at Sound Recorders. Mm-hmm. And I rang the bell, and Eric comes out. He says, "What's up, Phil?" I said, "Well, I wanted to pick up our tapes from our recordings because we're getting signed with RCA Victor. We need those." He says, "Okay, cool. I'm working with Paul McCartney right now. we're doing the Ram album." And he said, "Come back in about 2 hours, and I'll play you one of the things I just finished mixing." And it was Uncle Albert.
Oh, wow.
Hands across the water, hands across the sky. And he played that for me. And I thought, my God, what a great mix. It is so alive. It has such good presence. And I was the first guy to hear it. I don't know if Paul McCartney knows that, but Paul, if you're there and you're listening, I got to hear that song, Uncle Albert. Is that what it was called?
It's called Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey, because it's both parts. Yeah, the hands across the water part is the Admiral Halsey part. The Uncle Albert part is "We're so sorry,
Uncle Albert. We're so sorry if it caused you any pain." That part, yeah. I always liked thematic kind of songs that were kind of like watching a movie. Yeah. And I did stuff like that in some of my recordings. You'll hear that on some of my stuff.
But speaking of that song, that was like the earliest McCartney song I ever heard in my life. I was a little kid, but I didn't know it was Paul McCartney. I didn't know the Beatles, really. I was like 4 or 5 years old, and that song came out, and I just loved it. And it's like later, when I became a true Beatles fan, I was like, wow, I'm glad that this guy was the guy who did it.
Oh yeah, and such a talented guy. And he plays lead guitar great.
Right.
We both started out as guitar players and both had to go to bass to fulfill a need in this rock band. Right. That's the same thing you did. That's the same thing I had to do with the Raiders. But I'm glad. I love the bass. Once I really got behind it and got behind the idea of being a bass player, I loved being able to invent these lines, to help the song have that pocket.
Right. One other question about the Raiders, and then we'll move back on to other things, were you there when they signed to Columbia Records, or did they sign before?
They were already with Columbia.
Oh, okay. Now,
but they hadn't had any hits yet.
Right. Now, what's funny is, the Sing Along with Mitch Miller was the head of Columbia Records division, and he hated rock and roll, supposedly.
He hated rock.
Why was Paul Revere and the Raiders signed?
Here's what's the ironic thing about that story. Paul Revere in 1963 released Louie Louie as a 45 on Columbia, and it sold 350,000 copies in the Northwest, completely outsold the Kingsmen. We recorded that song in the same studio in the same week, and that was up in the Northwest. And then Columbia released it. Columbia released the record, and but the Kingsmen get the credit for the hit,
right?
But the reason they got the hit is because the FCC or the FBI or some agency reviewed the record and said it was vulgar and it had vulgar lyrics and it should be banned from the radio. Well, that news got out and all the kids wanted to buy a copy to hear the dirty lyrics. And what's ironic, the Kingsmen version was the original lyrics. The Raiders version has the dirty lyrics.
Right.
Because Mark used to like to do that, you know.
Yeah.
Mark used to like to insert some little innuendo kind of lyrics, a little bit racy, a little bit vulgar.
Right.
So it was a Raiders version.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. Here's what I'm getting to. 1963. Paul Revere is in his nightclub, the Crazy Horse, where Drake and I finally played. We were Sir Winston's trio, and then we got a drummer, and we became the Surfers, and we played in his club. But when we saw him that night playing with the Raiders, he was very sad that the kids didn't show up. It wasn't a big crowd. He pulled up he said, I got the #1 hit record in the country, and I can't fill this club. And it was Louie Louie. Now, why did he say the #1 record? You know why? Because there was 2 magazines that posted the top 100, Cashbox and Billboard.
Yeah.
Billboard only lists the Kingsmen as the #1 hit, Louie Louie. Cashbox, Louie Louie, Kingsmen, Paul Revere, and the Raiders. We were both listed because we had such great sales. You know, we like I said, we outsold the Kingsmen in the Northwest, and we got a lot of airplay on that record. You know, they were played alongside each other. Sometimes there was a Louie Louie festival, and there was a contest. You know, radios had a lot of fun with that song, and because we made it famous first in our dances, the Kingsmen recorded it after they heard what a great reception we got with the kids on that song at the dance halls. Kingsmen used to come to our dances and stand in front of the stage and watch the Raiders. Right? It was very common for guys to watch us. They loved our antics. They loved the innuendos. They loved the movement. They loved the sweat. They loved everything. Of course, you know, the girls liked it too, but guys were really fascinated with the Raiders because we weren't frilly. We were really kick ass. We were masculine alpha males up there, really kicking butt. Right. So, and the guys liked that. And so to kind of drive this point home, I don't want to forget this story. This is before I was in the band. And the Raiders are playing, like I think it's called the Spanish Castle up near Seattle. And Drake was new in the band, but he was putting on a show. And he was playing the guitar down on his knees. Then he put it behind his back. And he was doing steps, and he was just kicking butt and really putting on a show. And he noticed that there was a black kid out in the front row, right in front of the stage, watching his every move. And Drake kept performing on his knees behind his back, and finally the dance was over, and the black kid stuck around to meet Drake. So Drake's putting his guitar away, and this black kid kind of humbly walks up to him, and he says, "Hey man, you are really a great guitar player. You really inspired me." Drake says, "Oh, thanks man, I appreciate it. What's your name?" He says, "Jimi Hendrix."
Wow.
Is that amazing? And a few years later, we see him at the Monterey Pop Festival playing behind his back, playing on his knees, and doing all the stuff that he got from Drake.
Yeah.
But Drake had a huge influence on some pretty major people, you know.
Right.
Drake was a great player. He was an artist. He was soulful. Nothing that came out of that guitar was wasted. Yeah. You know, it was all very tasty. And the fact that Jimi Hendrix got inspired by Drake Levin, I think that's quite a big feather in Drake's hat.
Yeah. It's interesting how Hendrix kind of figures into a lot of stories, and is just around, and it's amazing he lived such a short life, because I recently watched a documentary about Chicago, particularly Terry Kath, and he met Hendrix backstage. I think they were still called The Big Thing then, and he got compliments from Hendrix too on his guitar playing. And
he wasn't the cat that killed himself, was he?
Yes, it was. Yeah. But he's like an incredible guitarist and everything. It's a good documentary if you can find it.
Was he the one that did that solo in 25 or 6 to 4?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
When I heard that song, I called Paul Revere or ran to him. I said, "Paul, listen to this song by Chicago. We got to do something like this." And, you know, Paul loved it too. Yeah, it was one of the best rock tunes of the day. But if we fast forward, if you don't mind, I just like to dovetail this other Hendrix story.
Sure.
Into the old Hendrix story when he was complimenting Drake. So fast forward, now I'm in the Raiders. Me and Drake are in the Raiders, and we're famous. And we had left the Raiders 1967. And in 1968, Hendrix was playing the Whiskey A Go-Go, but he wasn't the headliner. It was Lee Michaels, you know, the keyboard player.
Yeah.
And Lee Michaels is a good friend of ours. And so me, Smitty, and Drake, the Brotherhood,
right?
We were recording now. We had RCA Victor as our label, and we were getting ready to release a record. And we've been working, you know, for months on it. And we had all this gear at the studio. We put studio instrument rental into business. I don't know if you know of SIR. They're a studio instrument rental.
Okay.
And so anyway, we were the first band to rent gear from them. We rented Hammond organs and drums and amplifiers and everything. And now they're national, you know, SIR. So anyway, we go to see Lee Michaels, and lo and behold, he brings Hendrix on stage to jam with him. Now, this is wall-to-wall people. We're all next to other bodies, and as the crowd's moving, the whole crowd moves, you know what I'm saying? Because the groove is so amazing. And Hendrix was up there just soloing, and then Lee Michaels and Frosty, Bartholomew Frost on the drums, and it was just wild. Well, guess what? They wouldn't stop playing. 2:00. Clubs are supposed to close by 2. They're supposed to run the crowd out. No more, you know, it's finished, 2:00. And so Mario, the owner of the Whiskey, gets up there on the steps of the stage and looks at Michael and goes, 2:00, it's 2:00. And they didn't care. They just kept playing. So they let him go for another 15 minutes. Suddenly Mario pulls the plug. They're like, boo. And all the power, and the crowd is like in shock. Yeah. Because the crowd was grooving it. The lights were flashing. All the lights went away. We just had, you know, regular lights, you know, regular bright lights for the janitors, you know, so they could clean up. And everything, all the magic stopped. So Drake and I ran on stage because Lee was a good friend of ours. And we said, hey, Lee, Jimmy, because Jimmy respected Drake because he had met Drake earlier in his life in 1964, you know? And so I think this was 68. We said, listen, we have a studio full of gear, amplifiers, 2 sets of drums. And, you know, Hendrix's band was with him, Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell. They were all there, but everybody was pretty stoned. But Hendrix still had it together. So we said, why don't you come over to RCA Victor? Now, this was like 2:30, 3 in the morning. We finally got all our stuff together and the equipment, and we drove over to RCA, which was down in Hollywood, about 5 miles. We got to the studio, and the problem was it was nighttime. No one was in the building except one security guard. And so here's all these wild hippies. We're slightly stoned. And we said to the security guard, all right, listen, we're going to bring a bunch of people in here to do some jamming in our studio. We're signed to RCA. He says, no, man, I can't let you in. This is everything's closed. I said, well, I think our engineer is going to come down too. Hank McGill was our engineer. And he said, well, I don't think so. I said, oh, listen, man, we got Jimi Hendrix coming down. It's going to record it. Lee Michaels, man, these are huge cats in rock and roll. You can't turn us away. We're recording artists with RCA Victor. And he says, okay. So here comes a whole parade. Not only Lee Michaels and Jimi Hendrix and his band, all the Brotherhood, me, Drake, and Smitty, and Ron Collins, but somehow some other cats heard about this, and they were following right behind. All these wannabe guitar players. So about another 10 guys come marching in after us, and so now we're in the studio. And Hank, our engineer, said, no, man. We woke him up. It was like 3 in the morning. No, man, I can't come down there. I'm in bed. I can't do that. Sorry. So we figured, well, it would have been great to have it recorded, you know. So we get into the studio. We had all the amps we needed, 2 drum sets, and B3 Hammond organs, nice stuff. And so Hendrix gets his guitar. He's left-handed, isn't he? Got to do this stuff. And so he's playing and riffing, and I'm playing the bass, and Smitty's playing one of the drum sets, Bartholomew Frost on the other one, Frosty. And, it's getting loud. It gets really loud, but everybody's got everything turned up to 10, very loud. And then plus all these other extra guitar players are plugged in, and they're jamming with us. And pretty soon it's just like blood curdling on the eardrums. And all these guitar players were wanting to impress Hendrix.
Wow.
And one by one, they would walk up to him and they would do one of their guitar, they would do a guitar lick and try to impress. And Hendrix would nod his head and kind of walk the other way. And sure enough, another guy would come this way, and Hendrix would go, yeah, he nod his head, walk away. Finally, he walks over to me. I'm playing bass. I'm not going to compete with him. And so he stands right next to me in front of my bass amp with his back to everybody. And he just plays there.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And then all of a sudden he kind of like does a kind of a start, and his pick got broken. And so, I'm trying to keep some sound going. He says, "Hey man, do you got another pick?" I said, "Yeah." So I dug out one of my Moshe picks. Now these are bass picks, and these are the greatest picks because his pick broke, right? So he needed a pick that wouldn't break. So I gave him this pick. Can you see that?
Yeah.
They don't make him anymore, but it's called Moshe. And I fell in love with these, and I've ordered hundreds of them, so I have a supply. So when they did go out of business, I still had. So I handed him this, and he looked, "Oh wow, man!" I said, "Yeah, it's got a skin grip. See that little hole? And they're nylon. They never break." And so he played the rest of the jam till about 5 a.m. with my Moshe pick. And so everybody finally decided it was over, and the music faded away, and everybody was tired, and everybody was kind of stoned. Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell didn't even play. They were just too wiped out. So they just stood and smoked some more joints and, listened to all the loud music. And I don't know how it sounded, but everybody was playing the best they could play. And it was loud. I would have loved to have had a recording of some of that to see what we did.
Right.
So anyway, to make a long story short, Hendrix walks up to me after the music stopped and everybody put their instruments away. He walked over and said, "Hey man, here's your pick back." I said, "No, man, you keep it. You might like it, and they don't break." And he goes, "Oh wow, man. Thank you. I appreciate it." And he says, "I just want to tell you, I loved your bass playing. You've got a great groove. You really laid down a nice pocket." And I thought, "Oh, thank you." We shook hands, and that was the last. Well, no, it wasn't the last I saw him because we went to one of his recording sessions.
Okay. The last you played with him then.
Yeah, that's the last time I played live with him. But then we went to, he was in town to record. So we went to a studio where he was recording, and they were doing one take after the other. And they would play for 30 seconds. No, it's got to go like this. And he would tell his guys, I want it to accent this, or I want this chord here. And they were just making it up out of their heads as they were playing, and all their stuff was live, So we that was kind of tedious actually, because they kept going over and over the same section of the song. And I don't know if they ever got it, by the time we left, but that was the last time I had any contact with him. And I really appreciated the fact that he was humble.
Yeah.
He was nice to me. He gave me a great compliment. He gave Drake Levin a great compliment way back in 1964 at the Spanish Castle when he said that Drake inspired him.
Yeah.
And so Drake and I both had great experiences with this, iconic, beautiful, wonderful man, this guitar player that we both loved and respected. So on the Brotherhood album, this is just a little information, some insight. You're going to hear guitar work that Drake literally stole from Hendrix. He literally did licks, and they had that edgy sound, and and everything that Hendrix did, Drake loved. So we incorporated some of that guitar work into the Brotherhood songs. Do you have any Brotherhood albums?
I do not. I need to get some, but the question I have about that is, are the Brotherhood albums kind of like where you would have taken the Raiders had they?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Exactly, and the messages were relevant. It was all rock. It was all heavy, great stuff, rock and roll, and some was a little thematic, like the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper. We did a few thematic songs, but by the most part, it was just down in the trenches, rock and roll, great pocket, great groove, and no nonsense.
And you did like 4 albums, is that right?
Something we did like 3. That? We
three.
Did,
okay.
Yeah, 3. Okay. We did 3 albums, and on the second Brotherhood album, we were down to a power trio because Smitty left the band. And when Smitty left, we lost the keyboard player because he got kind of fed up with me and Drake arguing all the time. Drake and I used to argue quite a bit, and Smitty would just sit there, twiddling his fingers, saying, "You guys are wasting time. We could have been recording songs right now."
Yeah.
Drake and I were both opinionated, and we locked horns a lot, but we loved each other.
Yeah.
And on the second, especially on the second Brotherhood album, he used a lot of that Hendrix tone on songs like California Dreamin'. We did a hard rock power trio, Jimi Hendrix influenced version of California Dreamin'. If you get the Brotherhood album, play that one.
Okay.
We also did a Beatles song called When I Get Home. Whoa, I got a whole lot of things to tell her when I get home,
We can splice those in on the show here so we can hear it.
Yeah.
So I'll try to get a copies of those.
Let's see. They put it out as a CD now. Brotherhood is available on CD.
Right. Yeah.
All 3 of our albums.
I noticed that. Yeah.
2 were Brotherhood albums. One is a psychedelic album that we did with a lot of our friends. And it's called Joyride. It's not even, it's called Friend Sound, Joyride. And we have Brotherhood running the show, but we had all our musical friends in the studio jamming with us. And we did a lot of psychedelic effects and tricks and, kind of Frank Zappa stuff and wild stuff.
Yeah.
Psychedelic. We sold that album to RCA Victor for like $2,500, just enough to pay the studio bill. And because it was too far out. It wasn't radio friendly, but it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It was what's the word I'm looking for? Ahead of its time. It was
now that's all I'm thinking of is
ahead of its time.
I know what you mean exactly.
Kind of like prophetic. It was seeing into the future.
Yeah.
Where a lot of groups got influenced by it, and they wanted to do a psychedelic album like that.
Yeah.
And it never became mainstream though.
Yeah.
Because it was too far out.
Right.
The guys played psychedelic music, but even Jefferson Airplane were known to have played some psychedelic music, but that was still songs and rock and roll. This was like John Cage and Wilhelm Stockhouse.
Wow. I have to dig this up. Okay, because I am a Zappa fan and I am an Airplane fan too. So it's like I know what it probably would sound like. I can envision. Oh,
it's in a very audio wise. It's an audio carnival of all kinds of ideas. And like I was going to say, with my hands like this, I did one song with my fingers plucking the strings of the piano.
Yeah.
I didn't play the keys. I just plucked strings, and it's called The Empire of Light.
Okay.
And Ron Collins was on the Hammond organ. I would do some plucking.
Yeah.
And then he would do his little riff to complement what I just plucked. Yeah. And then Smitty and Drake were in the sound. We're in the studio on the console, on the mixer, and they were doing special effects, echo, repeat, blah, 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 you know, and they were playing with a board and creating sound effects while we're doing this. The two of it, it was all live at one take, but it's called The Empire of Light, which was the name of a painting by Rene Magritte. I don't know if you ever heard of Magritte, but he was pretty popular back in the 60s. Rene Magritte. Okay. And he had a painting called The Empire of Light. So I decided to call it that. But this album, man, was far out.
I'm wondering, I don't know, do you know who Andrew Sandoval is? He's been like the Monkees tour manager, and he's written a book about him. And
his name sounds really familiar.
He has a podcast himself, and it's called Welcome to the Sunshine. And he tends to play more psychedelic music by different artists. Like he's done episodes where he's done the psychedelic albums, the Four Seasons, and of you're the person you played with, Ricky Nelson. He did a couple psychedelic albums. So I'm wondering if he did a Brotherhood episode, or at least played some. Wait,
what do you mean? He made the record psychedelic?
No. He does it's a podcast called Welcome to the Sunshine. He plays like DJ, and he'll talk about records, and they're usually psychedelic records. So I'm wondering if he's played Brotherhood on his show. I'll have to check that out.
How did Ricky Nelson ever do because
Ricky Nelson actually did a psychedelic album in the late 60s. You didn't know this?
I was his bass player.
Well, then because
I was hired.
It was weird.
I was hired in this. Yeah, I was part of the Stone
Candy
on
band. It, but it's like
he just played I'm Walking and Traveling Man, and it's so easy to be free.
It was weird because a lot of groups tried at least one psychedelic album. I said the Four Seasons, you know them from Big Girls Don't Cry, Sherry, and all that stuff. And then they do this weird ass psychedelic album in the late 60s, and it's like, it's like
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, folks. I had to pick up my pick.
Oh, that's okay.
The one that I loaned. No, Hendrix kept his pick.
I was gonna say Hendrix is actually
he kept it. I always look at
$1 million.
I always look at pictures of him.
Anyway,
when he's playing guitar in some of these photographs, if he's holding on to this in his he's left.
My point of mentioning the podcast is that they play different psychedelic tunes from different artists, that even more obscure ones, and it's like, I'll probably like it when I hear.
Well, he would love this if he likes psychedelic.
Yeah,
because let's see. Just look at the cover.
Ooh. Joyride Friends Sound.
Look at that painting though, man.
That's almost like After Bathing at Baxter's, the third Jefferson Airplane album, in a certain respect, just kind of what it kind of reminds me of.
And look what the subtitle on the back calls it. A musical free-for-all.
It's kind of weird that the RCA didn't know what to do with it, but RCA, I've kind of found this out on RCA, that other than Elvis, they didn't really know how, and maybe Jefferson Starship, they didn't really know how to market people in rock and roll music, until like the 80s or something, when they finally got Eurythmics and.
Well, I think they started getting hip to it in the late 60s and 70s, because they realized the money is with the rockers.
Yeah,
money is with the kids' music. Andy Williams was good, but it's not the big money anymore. The money's all in rock and roll.
Yeah,
and Tony Bennett had a nice long career till he was 95.
Right,
but they were the exception to the rule. And.
So before we kind of wrap up, I wanted to touch on a few things. So I mentioned Ricky Nelson. Did you get that gig with Ricky Nelson because your uncle appeared on Ozzie and Harriet? Is that how that worked, or is it just purely coincidental?
Here's a couple. I don't think anything's coincidental, but
okay.
But you could question me on that. But it did work out.
Yeah.
And there was some connections here. Number one, my mother was the massage therapist for Ricky's mom, Harriet.
All right, that's an even stronger connection.
So I used to go and they lived in Hollywood, not far away from Sound Recorders, where Eric the Norwegian was doing Paul McCartney. And so just up the hills there is the Harriet Nelson house, Ozzie and Harriet, and Rick. So I'd come there, and occasionally I would go with my mom, and I was, as a young boy. And I'd see Rick or David walk through the living room or walk across the room, and we'd say hi. Okay, that's early years, 50s. Okay. Then we get into the 60s, and my uncle Jack Wagner, he was on the Ozzie and Harriet show,
right,
as the soda jerk.
Right.
Okay. and so there's a second connection.
Okay.
And then Brotherhood was formed, and we needed a manager. And somehow, I wish I had the exact story or the premise. Somehow we met Don Nelson, who was Ricky's uncle. Because we used to go to Ricky's house and play pool or do this. Or, another connection.
So he's Ozzy's brother.
My parents used to live in the beach house that was owned by Ozzie and Harriet, and they would allow Mimi, my mom, dad, who had lots of kids, to just take over the house for a couple of weeks and live on the beach as a vacation. So the connection was real close. Harriet loved my mom, and somehow in the process of all these things, we got to know the family, and I got to know Ricky because I would go up to his house, and we would have like a little party. And I'm not sure how that happened, but it happened during the Brotherhood days. So Don Nelson became the manager of Brotherhood. And he was a great guy. And he would play flute. He played flute. He was a great musician.
Yeah.
He played flute on some of our recordings in Brotherhood. So some of those flute solos, that's Don Nelson.
Oh, okay. Well, the whole Nelson family is musical. I mean, Harriet was a singer, Ozzie was band leader, and he could play a few different instruments and things like that. And,
so it was a musical family.
Yeah.
I think Ozzie was a band leader.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
A big band leader. Yeah. So there's a lot of music there. And so because I had a close relationship with Don, and then when the Brotherhood broke up, that meant that Don didn't have a job anymore as managing the Brotherhood because we were finished. Our contract was over with RCA Victor. The band folded. And the next second, I get a call from Don. He said, "Phil, you won't believe this. How would you like to play bass with Ricky?" The Stone Canyon Band? Yeah. He's going on tour, and his bass player is leaving.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I said, who's his bass player? He said, Randy Meisner. One of the founders of the Eagles.
Right.
It was Glenn Fry, Don Henley, and Randy Meisner, and one other cat. I don't know if it was Don Felder.
I think it was Felder, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Randy Meisner left Ricky to go and start a band called the Eagles. That's nice. He was a great player, great high singer, had a great high voice. So I had to take some of his parts, challenging as they were. I was able to do it. And when I went to the first rehearsal with Ricky, I had already studied all his music for a couple of weeks and learned everything, all the vocal parts, all the bass part. So when we got to rehearsal, Ricky was concerned that I'd be able to fill the bill that quickly, because we were going on tour, and he was nervous about getting the band tight. So he said, "Phil, what do you want to do?" I said, "Call anything." He said, any song you want. He said, "Okay, let's do I'm Walking, Traveling Man, or whatever, Lonesome Town." And as he counted off, and I was there, boom, 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 and we finished the song. I did the background vocals, and he looked at me and said, "Wow, man, that is amazing." And then he said, I guess the saying is true. Every man can be replaced. So I said, "Well, thank you. I appreciate that." So we had one rehearsal, and we went right on the road because I knew all the tunes,
Yeah.
And I also have a nice photograph. Oh, it's in the booklet. It's in one of these booklets. Why would it be in the booklet? Because I did something related to Ricky Nelson. Let's see. What was it that was related to Ricky Nelson?
I think you did one of his songs, I thought, but I could be wrong.
Did I do a tune of his? Here it is, right here.
Yeah.
If you look at this lower picture, right here. That's Ricky. That's Ricky Nelson on the bottom. That's Chris Harmon, the girl in the middle, and that's me. And I'm wearing like a Nehru jacket. That's I guess I can't get any better focus on that.
That's okay.
But that's Ricky.
It's a reason to buy this CD. You can see that in focus.
Yeah, you can see it. So he came to our album release party. We finally got an album finished with RCA Victor. And we had developed a relationship with Ricky based on Don Nelson keeping him in the loop. And we would go up to his house and have a little party and play games, play pool or whatever. And so there's a picture of him in my album. And the reason I'm bringing this up is why am I bringing this up? I forgot the theme of what we were talking about.
Oh, just Ricky Nelson in general. You know why you put it.
Oh yeah, I replaced Randy Meisner. We go on the road, have a great time on the road, just really nice, and all the people loved it, right? But at the end of this show, at every club, the stage manager would come backstage and he'd say, "Hey, Rick, here's some letters from the audience. They wanted me to bring back to you." So Rick would say, "Thanks." And he looked at him and say, "Oh, Phil, this one's for you. This one's for you too. This one's for you." And, "Oh, this one's for you. I didn't get any. What's the deal here?" I said, "Well, I used to tour the country a lot. So I told a lot of my friends to come and see the show, and I got in contact with some of my church members that live in these various towns, and they came to the show, and lo and behold, that started to become a bone of contention.
Wow.
That I was getting more letters from the audience than Ricky.
Who'd have thunk? Wow.
So, it's kind of wild, and I will put this in the interview, and if you want to edit, that's your call.
Okay. Well,
but let me just say this quickly.
Okay.
Tina and I started to study the Bible in the late 60s with Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. And we had a comprehensive study of the Bible with the witnesses, and we decided this was the way we wanted to go. And there's an international brotherhood there that no matter where you go, you're going to find people, witnesses all over the country. So the first thing I do when I get to town with Ricky, I call the Kingdom Hall. I said, "Hi, I'm Phil Volk. I live in Vegas, and I'm in town doing a gig at the nightclub here, whatever it's called. And I'd love to meet some of the brothers and sisters from the congregation here." They all show up. 10 or 15 witnesses would show up at the club, and they were the ones writing the notes to me.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, and so afterwards they say, "Hey, can we take you out to dinner? Can we show you around the area?" So every town I went to, I had people courting me here, taking me there, showing me the sights, taking me to the beach, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I had a built-in family, and that really impressed me. I wasn't even baptized yet. I was studying, and I thought, well, this looks like the right way to go. I like this religion. I like these people. So they all showed up at the gigs, and that's what ticked off Ricky. He didn't get hardly any letters, and I was getting most of the letters because my witness friends were writing letters to me after they saw the gig. So as time goes on, it became one of the thing. It became the straw that broke the camel's back. I won't tell you the rest of it because it's kind of elongated, but we had a difference of opinion, a difference of ethics, a difference of philosophical beliefs, religious beliefs, and they fired me.
Wow. Well, the whole story I know is on your website because that's where I saw it, and it talks about what differences you had and things like that on there. So,
it talked about the troubadour?
Yes. Yeah. That's So
it was a weird situation because I know he loved my bass playing.
Yeah.
So when the manager called the day after the Troubadour gig, he says, "You're fired from Ricky Nelson's band." I said, "Why?" He says, "He doesn't think you're a good enough bass player." I said, "Well, that's a lot of BS." I said a stronger word than that. And I said, Ricky has complimented me from day one about my bass playing.
Yeah.
And he says he couldn't believe I could play all those complicated lines and sing lead at the same time. I know he likes my bass playing. My first rehearsal with Ricky, he said, "Wow, I guess every man can be replaced. You're fantastic. I'm glad you know all my tunes and all the background vocals, you know. This is going to be a little bit easier than I thought." So I know I had his vote of confidence with my playing.
Yeah.
But because there was a religious factor that came into the picture, you know, it divides people. That's too bad, you know.
Right.
Because religions can be divided, just like in World War II.
Yeah.
The Catholics in Europe killed the Catholics in the United States. You know, they were warring against each other, and they're in the same religion. You know, and that's why a lot of people are turned off with religion.
Yeah,
because it should promote peace and unity. So that's my sermonette for the day.
Okay, and we'll leave it in. I don't usually cut unless it's something like.
Well, it's real. You know, anyway, it's real.
No,
I've been one of Jehovah's Witnesses for 52 years. I was baptized in 1970, which was the year I toured with Ricky.
Okay.
After I got home, that summer, I got baptized. My wife and I were both baptized. My wife, Tina Mason. Do you know about Tina?
Well, you met her on Where the Action Is. She was on.
Yeah, she was the singer.
Yeah.
And I have to show you one thing. Okay, I'm coming back.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm coming back, Mama. I just want to pay tribute to one of the most beautiful girls in the world.
Yeah. And there's nice photos of her in the booklets and the CD.
Oh yeah, on the rocker CD.
Yeah.
If you want to see,
she sings backing vocals on there.
Yeah, if you want to see not only see pictures of Tina, but she sings about 4 solos of her own on the record. She sings "Will You Love Me Tomorrow," which is, oh my God.
Yeah. And
a few originals, and she sings a Delbert McClintock song called "You're Gonna Get What's Coming." Great little rocker. And so there's my darling. We lost her 8 months ago. It was the greatest pain I've ever experienced, losing her. And we were married 54 years.
Wow.
So life goes on. Fortunately, with my Bible foundation, I do have a hope for the future. You know, because we believe in a coming paradise earth, where people will be brought back to life, you know, and we'll be able to see those we lost and be reunited. So it's nice that Jesus gave us that hope. So I don't know what your beliefs are, but I don't want to interfere with what you're all about, you know.
I do believe in God, and I call myself a Christian. I'm not Jehovah's Witness, but I don't go, my religion is better than yours and all that stuff. I don't.
Everybody has to make up their own mind. It's a personal decision, and you know, God will bring you in.
Yeah.
If you're a good person, if you're trying to live right, if you're trying to show kindness to people and love, and you're honest, you know, God will bring you along. He'll show you the way.
Yeah.
You know, he'll show you the path. You just got to trust in God.
Yeah.
You know? So, wow, we got into religion, didn't we?
Is anybody still out there?
You know, it's good that it's real. I'm glad that it's real. I'm glad this is not just a watered down.
Well, I didn't want it that way. I mean, you kind of before we started, you know, when you finally answered the email, Charles Rosenay says, you know, contact this guy. He has lots of good stories and everything. And I go, okay. And then there's a long wait time. But when you finally contacted me, you just kind of said, do your homework, know what you're talking about. And so I knew a lot of the things that you talked about ahead of time, which is fine because, you know, it made for a more interesting interview instead of me just going, you're in the Raiders. Is that it? You know,
believe me, I've done interviews with guys that have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. And
they don't have the questions. You know, remember a guy named Charles Bartley?
Yeah.
he had a regular syndicated radio show.
Yeah.
And he did an interview with me, and he sent me questions. And then I guess we did the live interview, and we did the questions. It's just like, it was nice to have someone do their homework. And know what kind of questions to ask. Because and you're doing a great job. I mean, you're ready for this. I just hope you can fit some music into it.
Well, I mean,
we talked about,
given a few cues here and there that I can add a track or two. And then, I wanted to finish up because we've been talking about it. So, your latest album, you've done a few Fang and the Gang albums, or is this like your first one, or what's the story on this?
This is the first one.
Okay, so that's the one you mentioned earlier.
It's called Fang Revere's the Raiders.
Okay.
Now, I had to use that phraseology so I wouldn't get sued by using Revere and Raiders. So the word reveres means to pay tribute. Because it's Revere's with an S.
It's a very good, clever title.
And Paul said, "Hey, Phil, that was real clever. Now I can't sue you for using Revere and Raiders all in the same sentence."
Well, I know I don't want to go into all the detail about that, but I mean, at this point, granted, many of the Raiders have passed on and stuff like that. But I mean, over the years, you did a few reunions and stuff like that. So did you mend all the fences and everything? So
yes. Paul and I have always loved each other.
Okay.
Paul and I have always been close. And a year before he passed away, I went up to Idaho to his cabin up in the mountains with Sydney, his wife. And I videotaped him telling the story about the early Raiders in those early days and how it all happened, how he got in music, how he got into a rock band, and how he ended up having his own band called the Downbeats, and how he brought Mark Lindsay in later. Mark Lindsay always he takes credit for being a co-founder. But Paul Revere did this on his own. And he later brought Mark into the loop, and even helped Mark learn how to play saxophone.
Wow.
He would sit at the piano and say, "Okay, hit this note, find this note on your sax." So Mark would go, bam, that's the one. Okay, remember that. That's a C. And they would learn. He learned how to play sax by Paul playing the notes on the piano and Mark finding out what they were, and then he would know what the fingering was,
Wow.
And so eventually he became one of the best. And I say this in all sincerity. He became one of the best saxophone players in the 60s. He had a great tone. It was real edgy. He had that growl, and it was great rock and roll sax. The best rock sax player, I think, in the business, Mark Lindsay. And I give him that because he was. And he had to play a lot of sax in those early days when he played more sax than he did vocals. And eventually they gave him more vocals and more. And pretty soon he became the teen idol, lead singer, front man. And he did it well. He did it good. He had the ego for it, and he had the attitude, and he established his own style as a front man. It was uniquely his. And I admire him. I'm just sorry they didn't give me that one single, In My Community.
Right.
When Terry wanted to put it out as an A side. So it actually ended up on the B side of the record. Because Terry said, "Okay, Paul, we'll put out Great Airplane Strike as the A side, but if it starts to falter on the radio, I'm going to flip it and tell people to start promoting In My Community." And I thought, "Oh, fail." But I think Great Airplane Strike went to about number 20.
Yeah. And it's too bad In My Community didn't make it onto the Greatest Hits album, because the Great Airplane Strike is on the album, and it's like it'd be nice to have both sides of the single. But
well, believe it or not, In My Community has made it on several greatest hit compilations.
Well, yeah, I know later on, but I mean the original.
The one you showed me. No, it didn't.
I know there's the Essential and all the other ones. More tracks and
there's so many compilations out there, and they usually always include my songs, In My Community, Why, and Get It On. And I'm thinking that's great, So that's been more money for me. because
Well,
I
that's
own
good. You
those.
still get royalties on that. There's
Yeah, I own those. I own the copyrights on those
good.
tunes,
That's good.
and I still get my performance royalties on the tunes I didn't write.
Okay.
You know, just speaking of our music, the very famous Hollywood director Quentin Tarantino.
Oh yeah.
He put out a movie the last couple of years called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And guess how many Raiders songs he used in the movie?
Oh, 4. I was going to say 3. Wow.
He used Good Thing,
Right.
Hungry,
Yeah.
Mr. Sun, Mr. Moon, and Happening 68. Well,
Oh,
I was in
you're
on
those 2. Yeah.
You know, I was in on Good Thing and Hungry.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm one of the writers on Hungry, but Terry Melcher, that bum, he never put my name on the songwriter's contract. So I never got credit. And I've been fighting Mark all these years trying to get him to fix it for me. He never has. And so it's like, wow, that's that song, by the way. You know, movie was about Sharon Tate,
right,
who was living in the house that Terry Melcher subleased to her. Mark and Terry were living in that house. Our manager, Roger Hart, first got the house.
Yeah.
It's on that Cielo Drive.
Right.
It was featured in the movie, and they always referred to it as Terry's house.
Right.
They're talking about Terry Melcher.
Right.
And they even show Manson coming to the door and talking to Sharon Tate. Well, the true story was he kept showing up. Terry and Mark got creeped out with him, and they moved out of the house and rented it to Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, right?
Right.
So now in the movie, they show Manson coming to the house, and he's saying, "Hey, is Terry here?" And she says, "Oh, no, he doesn't live here anymore." Well, that was what the movie did. You know, kind of Tarantino rewrote some history here.
Yeah, of course.
The fact of the matter is, Manson was very angry with Sharon Tate. And he says to her, "I think you're lying, because I've seen him here many times." No, he moved out and he leased the house to me. And if you don't leave, Sharon Tate says, "I'm going to call the police." Well, that pissed off Manson. And guess what? 2 nights or 3 nights later, the kill squad was there, killing everybody in that house. Crazy. Because Manson was humiliated, and he didn't like being sent away that way. And you know, they don't show that in the movie.
Well, he's fictionalized a lot of things. I mean,
well, he rewrote history.
I mean, a lot of people complain about Bruce Lee. You know,
wasn't that funny?
Yeah, I think it's funny, but you know, a lot of people say Bruce Lee wouldn't have accepted that. You know, it's fictionalized. Okay?
That was one of the funniest scenes.
Yeah, have a sense of humor. It's like
and you know, Brad Pitt won the Golden Globe Award for that. And I think he won the Oscar, didn't he, for Best Supporting Actor?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a great soundtrack, and it did make me, you know, I was already a Raiders fan, but it just reignited that, and I think that was the whole purpose of it.
You know, Quentin Tarantino loves the Raiders.
Yeah,
he loves that music, and the fact that he wrote that movie surrounding Sharon Tate's life and the house on Cielo Drive. They have since tore the house down. Yeah, you know, because it has a pretty bad past. Yeah, and I don't think anybody would want to move into that. So, but that's where we used to live and listen to our acetates after recording session. We go back up to Terry's house, and he had a big PA system, and we listen to our music, probably get stoned a little bit, and it was quite a lifestyle, you know. But then this other stuff happened, and just all hell broke loose. It was a terrible, terrible thing. But the movie itself was fascinating, because it was Sharon Tate was kind of a subplot. Yeah, she was just the neighbor of Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Who was an actor who was starting to slip. You know, his charm, his fame was starting. He was starting to slip a little bit, and it was driving him crazy. That he wasn't getting all the good jobs he wanted to get, and
it was kind of a take on Clint Eastwood's early career. You know, he had Rawhide and then had to make the spaghetti western, so it was kind of in that vein. But the show was called Lawman or something like that.
What do we have here? I just lost the screen.
Oh, I can see you fine.
No, I've got an advertisement here.
Oh, I don't know.
Let me see what happened. Oh, there we go.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's your computer telling you. But
a great movie, and
yeah.
I just got a record royalty from the soundtrack, and boy, was I happy to get that. It's one of the biggest royalties I've ever gotten.
Wow. So there was benefits being in the Raiders.
Oh, I love being in the Raiders. I got to tell you, I still feel heartbroken.
Being sarcastic, but yeah.
Paul Revere was so heartbroken that we were leaving the band.
Yeah.
Because he had just booked another tour and he invested in it with his own money, because he was doing so. The band was so hot on a national level that he figured if he promoted his own tour and invested in it, it could make a whole lot more money. But the original guys were not going to be there.
Wow.
And it drove him nuts. He freaked out. When he called Roger Hart that night, the manager, Roger, and Paul said, the guys are quitting the band. Fang, Drake, and Smitty just came to my room and they said they're leaving. And he broke down and he started to weep on the phone with Roger. And when Roger told me that story, I thought, because I really loved Paul. Yeah. He gave me the biggest break in my life, musically speaking, and he was a great guy. He taught me a lot about everything. He really had a lot of wisdom.
I'm glad you all were able to make amends and stuff later on instead of,
We were always good friends. We had a little dark period there after Brotherhood, after we left the period, but then I started going to his gigs here in Vegas and I would see him, and we got back on track with each other because he was still making good money and he loved, being in the band and everything, having his own band, the Raiders, even though they didn't have any originals anymore.
Right.
But Paul became kind of the front guy. And I don't know if you've seen his most recent show before he passed. Paul became the center focus of attention. He became the central figure on stage. He had a lead singer that did the Mark Lindsay songs and danced around and tried to do the frontman thing. But between each song, Paul would do comedy. He would do comedy bits and crazy stuff. He had a gun. He would fire a gun, and he had a monkey on his piano playing the cymbals, and he would cut all kinds of jokes. They were wearing those tights. He says, "This is what the tights look like." He had the front of either a Mustang or an Etzel, and inside the Etzel or the Mustang was his keyboards and all these props. And he said, "You know what these tights look like?" before he put them on. And he pulls out a little thing that would fit a baby doll. He says, "They're this small. We have to really stretch them to get them on." Just a little. And he had a lot of visual jokes, and he had a lot of, double entendres and just good punchlines to things. And he would get a great laugh. And so he became the show, and the songs were just the glue to go from one joke to the next. They'd play a song, he'd make some more jokes and talk a little more and do funny things, funny props, work with the audience, work with his guys. Then they do another Raiders song. So it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like what the Turtles did later on too, or
really,
Mark and Howard, they do comedy bits, but then they'd sing their hits and then they, do little.
Yeah, well, that was the Happy Together tour.
Yeah, that type of stuff.
And Mark Lindsay went out with them. I think Mark Lindsay has retired.
Yeah,
he just turned 80. I'm not that old yet. Thank goodness. Yeah, apparently there's some health issues that he's dealing with. And we just lost Keith Allison in November of last year, and his memorial is this April 3rd, which I'm planning on going to. But it's a shame we lost Billy Henschey, Keith Allison, other people in the entertainment field. It's just we're getting to be that age.
That time,
that time in our life where we're gonna have to say goodbye to a lot of different friends and stuff.
Well, I'm glad you're here for at least for the nonce.
Thank you, God. I'm glad I'm here. I'm very thankful. I've had a very exciting, interesting life.
Yeah,
and having that experience as a Raider was probably one of the blessings I could ever have as a musician. A kid that dreams about being a recording artist. I had all those dreams fulfilled, and it just doesn't get better. Then I married this wonderful girl, Tina, who was a singer, and we had bands together all through our life. You know, Fang and the Gang, Friendship Train, and it was magical. You know, I can't complain, except I hate not having her here. You know.
Okay. Well, sorry for that loss, but at least you did have a long, lengthy relationship, which sounds like it was a really good relationship.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It was great. And we were so much in love. We were married 54 years. Yeah. We had great chemistry, great compatibility and everything. And we had 4 kids. We raised 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. And I'm so glad I was able to put some of her solos on this album. She does about 4 or 5 solos on this that I featured her on. And I never had an opportunity or a project to put those songs on an album.
So she already had those recorded.
Oh yeah, a lot of this stuff was in the can.
Okay.
That's why it says up here, this represents 5 decades of recording history of Fang Volk plus special guest artists.
I just thought it was because you were doing some oldies and stuff like that. I didn't realize that.
I didn't want to call it an anthology, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a biographical anthology based on the liner notes. And it contains 39 songs, right? 39 songs, 2 discs, and 22 of those songs are originals that I wrote. Yeah. And 17 are covers.
Right.
You know.
And
no, it's a good blend. It's a good blend.
I don't take this as a negative, but I didn't really know your singing prior to this. But when I listened to this album, I just was amazed that you sound a lot like Eric Burdon of the Animals, and I thought that's really good. You know, so you know, I hope you take that in a positive way. You know,
that's why I did "Baby Please Don't Go" and I'm crying on the Just Like Us album, because Paul and Terry Melcher said, "Man, you kind of sound a little bit like Van Morrison, a little cross between Van Morrison and Eric Burdon, and you have the great voice for these songs." And so I went with it. You know, I decided, okay, I can fill that slot because it's different than Mark.
Yeah.
And the more different we sounded, the better. Yeah. You know, so they would never confuse my voice with his.
Yeah. You know? Then one other thing on this album is that you're kind of promoting this younger talent named Kelly J on there. You know, how did that come about? And she's kind of a country singer or something like that. She sings
I had a friend who did a lot of sound mixing on some of our gigs. We had been friends for some time. He also would do some sound mixing for this girl, Kelly J, in Colorado, and he got real close to the family, and they wanted this girl to become famous. They wanted her to be produced by the right guy. Right. And so James, the friend of them, the sound man, said, "Phil, you got to meet this Kelly J. She needs a good producer, and you're such a good producer. Why don't you listen to her and see if you can do something with her? She's really ready to go. She's beautiful, and she is a very pretty girl, and she has a great voice. But she was singing old country, and she was singing kind of nasal. You know, that country nasal thing that
Willie Nelson.
It's like, maybe I didn't love you quite as good as I could have." And I said, "Kelly, you got to get out of the nose. You got to get out of your nose and give me some chest, give me some throat, you know." And so I got her to do that, and we did. I said, "I'm going to give you a couple of pop tunes, and we're going to turn them into country tunes." And so we did "Faithfully" by Journey, kind of a country version. We did "Just Like a Woman," written by Bob Dylan. And we did a Vince Gill tune called "I'm Almost Ready." And she killed it. And I got her to use that full voice, and I got her to get the voice in her chest again and get it out of her nose. and if anybody gets this album, you're going to see Kelly J, and she's a beautiful girl. You know, she's really quite a beautiful girl. Let me show you. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
There's Kelly.
You want crystal clear pictures, buy the album.
Yeah. If you want to see Kelly J and hear her, and so her father,
she's very good.
Father was what?
She's very good.
Thank you. I'm glad you noticed that. Her father footed the bill for all the recording studio and all the work. And Kelly came to my house for a couple of weeks and we rehearsed with some of the musicians. Then we go into the studio and recorded it at one of the best studios here in town. Great engineers. And you can see the sound is really, really crystal clear and very bright, really punchy. Yeah. So there's the mixing on those tunes are really perfect. In fact, when they mastered the album, every album, every CD has to be mastered, so all the tunes kind of have a similar audio presence, right. And so I said, use Kelly J's songs as a sample of how I want the rest of the songs to sound. The EQ, the punch, the brightness, the brilliance, those songs are already done, Just listen to those, and so the guy who mastered it did that, and he made sure all the sounds kind of were compatible audio wise, So I'm glad you liked her. No, I don't think any girl has ever recorded Just Like a Woman, by Bob Dylan, and we thought that really could be a hit, because it's unusual to hear a Dylan song by a woman, But unfortunately, things didn't pan out. I couldn't get her signed. I tried to get her signed, but this music business is not an easy business,
right?
And I was fortunate to have gotten into it early in life and been with a successful band, have Dick Clark involved with us. Paul Revere was a great businessman, and we just finagled our way up to the top, with our talent, with our energy, and with our determination. And we were just fortunate that all the pieces fell into place, But trying to get her signed, no matter how good she looked, she was a good-looking woman, great voice. The record labels were tough to deal with, and that was, when did I do her? 2007, 2008.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a while ago, yeah.
And the music business had morphed into something I didn't even recognize, And I talked to a lot of executives, and they said they really liked the music, but they didn't have a place for her on the label.
Interesting.
Just sad, But I don't want to end the interview on that story.
No. Well, I know how I usually end my interviews. It's usually I give you the floor, the guests, the floor. And if you're going on tour, where can we see you? Or if you're appearing at conventions or something like that, or if there's a way to contact you, website, promoting an album, take it away.
Okay. Well, like I said, the album is available on my website, philfangvolk.com. philfangvolk.com. Volk is spelled VOLK, like Volkswagen. And that's where all my products are, all my albums. That album's on it, and this album's on it. And we announce, I have a Facebook page too, where I announce some of my happenings. I'm going back up to Portland, Oregon to play some gigs this spring up there, because that's just a good place for me. I just did a gig there in September of 2021, about 4 months ago. And I played with the Kingsmen, the guys who had the Louie hit.
Wow.
First time the Raiders. But we're all friends. We love each other.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, their lead guitar player, Mike Mitchell, died. And so this concert was kind of a tribute to Mike Mitchell. So me and Harpo went there and did a few Raiders songs in the middle of their set as special guests. And they had a whole bunch of other guests. They had one guy from the Romantics, and they had another girl who had played for Michael Jackson in the studio on guitar. They were some really good players. And Harpo and I thought, hey, this is working. The crowd loved us. They all rushed to the front of the stage when we did our set, and they're out there waving their hands. They got their phones videotaping us and smiling. And I thought, well, if they like us that much, why don't we do more gigs? And so it's possible that the next time you hear from me, I'll be telling you about some gigs we're doing up in the Northwest called Fang and Harpo Raider Revival.
Okay.
Fang and Harpo Raider Revival. And that has a kind of a good ring about it, doesn't it? Huh? You think it'll work?
Sure.
Will you come?
I will come. It's only a couple hours away.
You live up there,
Yeah.
We'll probably do some gigs in Portland and maybe Seattle. And Harpo's got his own little band up there, which is a little different genre than what we do as rockers. But he did this last gig with me for the Mike Mitchell tribute concert, and we had fun. We had a blast. And he still is healthy and looking good. He's a couple years older than me, but we've always been compatible, and it works. And so if you hear about Fang and Harpo coming to your town, come on over and see us.
All right.
And we'll rock it. We'll rock your socks off.
Okay. And is there anything else that you'd like to promote? Any other albums you're working on, or is it just right now promoting the rock?
No, I mean this took a few years.
Okay.
And then getting it printed, and it's a double CD. So I paid everything. I financed it and paid it all. So we're still trying to promote this to get the sales up, and pay the bill.
Right, exactly.
Production
I'm sure you play much material from those two CDs too, correct? In concert.
Oh yeah. And I'll do some of the big Raider hits in concert.
Yeah, of course.
I'll do some of my songs. I'll even do a couple of covers. I love Whiter Shade of Pale. I like Summertime Blues, Lucille, Little Richard. I cut my teeth on Little Richard. So I like to throw in some of that old classic rock and roll, the early rock days with Little Richard, and that music that we had in the early 60s that was so fantastic and had so much energy and power. It wasn't real complicated, like Summertime Blues is a great tune, and Whiter Shade of Pale, great tune, so my band Fang and the Gang has done some gigs around here and some music festivals. And I had my two daughters singing with me and my wife, Tina. And we played up till 2016 with that setup. And we had Jessica's husband on drums, and we had Kelly's husband on keyboards, and my wife singing with the girls. So it was kind of a family band, and it was really a beautiful experience that we could go out together as a family. And we did that Zucchini Festival up in, Fremont, Hayward, California, right outside of Oakland.
Right.
It's a real big festival.
Yeah,
they call it the Zucchini Festival because they have arts and crafts and everything. But the whole thing that draws people are the artists that come there.
Yeah.
And play. So we were there, and Bonnie Pointer was one of the acts.
Oh, wow.
That performed, and unfortunately she's passed.
Yeah.
She came on stage with us and sat in and just really kicked butt. It was so much fun. And Tower of Power, you name it, all these great bands played at the Zucchini Festival. Who's that percussionist, Sheila E?
Oh yeah, I've seen her with Ringo also.
yeah she did a set. And there was always good music at the Zouk Fest. And when I got the girls in my band, my daughters and my wife, and it was Fang and the Gang, that version, that was their first gig. And there were 5,000 people out there, and here are my two girls just dancing and singing, like they've been doing it all their life.
Oh wow! So
they're it's in the genes.
Yes,
they picked up the gene. I'm so proud of them. And my daughter Jessie also sings a solo on the Rocker album. She does a Brandy Carlisle tune called The Joke. Okay. So I'm very proud of them. I was very proud of what we accomplished as a family in music, and I hope people get the CD because it's a real story there. It's a pretty interesting backstory to this whole thing, and the music and the storyline. Well, I'm hoping I can keep the story going because I'm ready to play. I'm ready to do gigs.
Well, I was very impressed with the album. I'm very impressed with you, and I will definitely have to come up to Portland to see you when you're in town with Fang and Harpo.
Fang and Harpo, Raider Revival, baby. Yeah. Let's keep your eyes and ears opened for when we're around. I'll try to post it on Facebook. So it was great talking with you, Mark. Thanks for giving me all this time.
Thank you very much.
And I hope you can put this thing together. When do I get to see it?
Probably at the beginning of April. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Can you, after you have it edited, and maybe you can throw a few songs in,
Sure. Yeah.
Please try to throw one of Tina's songs in that you like.
All right.
She does 4 solos, I think, on my rock album, but she is so great. And So anyway, I'm happy to have talked with you, and this is a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. And
well, I try to make our show fun.
So here we go. Here's my son Brian right over here.
So I'll wrap it up here. Bring it back on yourself.
The reason I showed him is I have to give him credit because he's my tech guru.
No, who's behind you? There was somebody behind you peeking around the curtain.
Was that you?
No.
Was it Eric?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry.
Well, I have the dog. Well, she's
his father, Eric's father. Eric, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Just peek your head around one more time.
Sorry to interrupt.
His father played guitar on some of those songs on Rocker.
Oh wow!
Like Lola Lee and All Over No Wonder. And we've been childhood friends since we were 5 years old. Cool. And his dad is in the hospital right now, so he came down to help out and try to see what he can do to help his dad get better.
All right.
But he plays that great guitar solo on All Over No Wonder. That's the one that has the classical orchestra behind it.
Very cool.
All Over No Wonder. So that might be a good one to play.
All right, let's wrap this thing up, and then we'll chat a little bit after we're off the air.
Okay. Right.
I want to thank you, Phil Fang Volk, for being my special guest. It was lots of fun, and that wraps it up for another Fun Ideas podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was a thrill. I always enjoy talking about my history in music because it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great ride.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great night.